Throughout the time period that King Louis XVI ruled France, many wise decisions were not made. For example, he misused income greatly. He put aside an extravagant amount of money to spend on courts. Talking about the courts, he also preferred his personal interest to the court's interest, therefore making him incapable of making strong decisions. Many of his decisions were also highly influenced by his wife, Marie Antoinette. Due to the fact that he and his wife were having troubles conceiving the next heir to the throne, many of the French started to worry about his ability to rule France. France suddenly declined into its bankruptcy. His decision to be involved in the American War was a major drain, and the government debt spiraled out of control.
The mob mentality is what made so many people feel so passionate about the revolution. Everyone was upset with the way France was being ruled, but those who would take action is only in a fraction. Naturally, with peer pressure, these numbers increase and violence creeps in while people's anger rises and patience slips away. In 1791, 6,000 women marched 13 miles from Paris to Versailles. The women disagreed with how the country is ruled. Women took pride in caring for their family, so when resources prevented this from happening, it became personal. Alone they were upset, but together they became violently committed to taking action, killing a few guards as they fought for what they believed in.
After Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI were moved to Paris, they were kept at the Royal Palace of Tuileries. As battle disasters quickly rose, it led to revolutionaries to think that Louis was with the French enemies. In August of 1792, a mob of Parisians stormed the palace. They slaughtered the king's guards, but the royal family escaped just in time and fled to the Legislative Assembly. The people storming the palace were not originally murderers, yet they violently killed multiple guards, getting a mob mentality. On July 14th in 1789, the city of Paris took the spotlight away from the National Assembly. They had recently met on Versailles. Over 800 Parisians assembled outside the Bastille with rumors of occupying the medieval fortress used to hold prisoners and gunpowder. Before the mob leaders had planted the idea of taking over such an action, many of the citizens would not have thought to storm and take over such a space, but the mob mentality has encouraged violence amongst the crowds.
Faced with revolts, war, and international unrest, the National Convention of France established the Committee of Public Safety in 1793. It was created to act as an executive government for when the convention was not in session, and was intended to act quickly and take more extreme measures. The members believed that they were saving the revolution by responding to military threats in France. Eventually, reasonable beliefs turned radical ones, and Maximilien de Robespierre was elected to the committee in July of 1793, despite the fact that he had not pursued the position. Quickly gaining influence, he began guiding the committee's actions within a few months, making it gain more and more power. He took this time to even take out many of his political enemies for his own personal advantage.
During this time in the leadership position, around September of 1793 to July of 1794, citizens were killed if anyone thought they were against the revolution. Neighbors were turning on neighbors and friends against friends. With the special help of the guillotine, which was a killing machine used to behead people, 17,000 were executed, in a majority of the cases for little reason. "300,000 suspected enemies of the revolution were arrested. At least 10,000 died in prison. Rob really did create an atmosphere of terror, but it was no longer successful, just more of a bloodbath of their own people. Eventually, the convention feared for their own lives and turned on the Committee of Public Safety. Rob was executed by his own engine of terror, the guillotine. When the convention put an end to these mass murders, the radical phase started to die down as well. Now that the French weren't killing themselves so much, everything became a bit more calm.
The new system of power. Since Robespierre held a position of power, his shoes needed to be filled once he had died. However, the French wanted to avoid a dictatorship, so they invented the Directory. The Directory was made up of the lower house, the Council of 500, who proposed legislation, and the Council of Ancients, who held the power to accept or veto the proposed legislation. There were also 5 directors chosen by the Ancients. Unfortunately, the Directory lacked the sufficient funds for their projects or the course to enforce their will. They would eventually turn to Napoleon Bonaparte for help, and he would eventually become the dictator or emperor of France. Though placing them back where they started with an overall ruler like a dictator, the Directory and Napoleon regained power over the radicals and ended their phase.